Melissa. Hello and welcome to Writers Chat. We are so glad you're with us, and those that are here among us today and those who will watch later on the replay, thank you for being here and thank you for watching. Writers Chat is a place where writers gather to learn all things writerly. And today, as you can very well see, our usual hosts aren't here. Johnny and Jean are away. And so you guys have Melissa, Brandy, and myself. I'm Norma Poore, and we are super glad to be here. And today we're going to talk about detours in our writing life. What is a detour, you might ask? Well, it could be perhaps you've started your writing journey thinking you're going one way and God leads you another, or you're in the middle of writing exactly where God wants you to be and circumstances cause a detour. Whether that detour is you have to set writing aside for a little while to deal with life, or how that maybe changes what you're writing at the moment. So that's our topic for today, and we'll just jump right in. And so, for me, the last year has been one ginormous detour, in the sense that most of you know, last year, I had COVID pneumonia and was in the hospital really, really sick. And I couldn't write. I could barely put two sentences together because of the brain fog. And that's discouraging when you're sick and you want to write. You've got the heart for it, and the words kind of show up occasionally in your head, and you want to write, and then you get to your computer and there's nothing. So what do? You give yourself grace, and God has allowed this circumstance for a reason. And sometimes, as it says in Psalm 23, he makes me lie down in green pastures by still waters. Sometimes we get so busy that God has to allow circumstances that make us be still and cry out to him. And so that's what I did. And then since then, I was able to start writing again. I remember it was about 4 months after I got out of the hospital. I had an idea for an article come to mind, and I was so excited. I went to my computer. I thought, because I was keeping a file that had a list of ideas that would pop in my head. So I went and tried, let me just get that idea down. That's a really good one. And I ended up writing like 1,200 words. I was so excited because I felt like I was back. And then, I got sick again, and then family problems, and then grandchildren, and then trips to the ER. And as we prayed beforehand, my mother-in-law is very, very ill. And it's just been and then, when you have a big family, there's always drama going on. And that's okay. That's part of life. So, it's my detour has been multiple pronged over the past year. But God has given me little snippets of time to write and to get things done. And I try to take advantage of those. One of the very first detours I experienced was when God first called me to write. I thought I was going to get to write romantic suspense because that's what I love to read. And at my first writers conference, which happened to be Blue Ridge Christian Writers Conference, God made it clear, no, you're going to write fiction. Okay, great. A couple years later, went back to Blue Ridge, and God says, no. We're not going to do fiction or nonfiction, because I had ideas and I just couldn't quite get traction. And so when I went last year to Blue Ridge, God showed me he wanted me to do articles. And I'm like, okay. Because when we be still and we listen in the detour, in the frustration of the detour, in the sadness and the emotional roller coaster of the detour, we have to take time to be still and hear hear God's voice. And in each of these detours over the past couple of years, God has been, when I quit my griping, stopped my grumbling and my complaining and my arguing with God, and I would finally be still, then I would hear his plan for me. And then I'd pick up and we'd take off again. So life is full of detours, whether it's illness and you can't write. I know that a dear writer friend of mine, she had a couple of a couple of family members die, and it was really close together. And this was a couple of years ago. And she took a whole year off writing because the mourning for a mom and a brother were just more than her brain could handle everything else. And she just had to set it down for, she said, a whole year. And that's okay. If you feel you need to step aside for a while from writing because of the detours, it's okay. Don't let the enemy or self-doubt get in there and make you feel guilty. It's okay to set it down for a while because nothing's going to happen with it until God's ready anyway, right? So there's a song that's been running in my head over the past few days. Life is hard, but God is good. And I know we can all attest to that. And to the, like some have already said in the chat, to the detours in life are just, you can't help them. Often they're not our own doing. Sometimes they are. And when they are our own doing, whether it's bad choices or whatever, then we just have to own it, confess it, and accept God's forgiveness, forgive ourselves, and move on. A case in point with that, last week I had a deadline for 4 articles to go to Guideposts. And because of everything happening, I kept procrastinating, doing snippets here and there. So I had a general idea of what I was doing with the articles. And it came down to the wire and I only got 3 in. And I was pretty frustrated with myself. And then as I was looking back over my things, God was so gracious and pointed out to me that 2 of the articles I was originally going to write were very similar. So I felt, okay, no big deal that I didn't get the 4th one in. So, we have to accept God's grace and give grace to ourselves as well. We are human. Life happens, and we can't always be right here at the computer pounding away. Family is always, always first. I should say, family is always, always second. God's always first. But here on earth, family is always first. So if you're struggling with family detours, life detours right now, just take a moment and take a deep breath. Inhale and let out all that stress and believe and trust that God's got you right here in the palm of his righteous right hand. He's got you. And that's my detour. The list could go like blah, 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 but we won't do that. That's just the highlights. That's all you guys need. But no, you're not in it alone. Every single writer, from the greatest to the ones that are just beginning, from the Jerry Jenkins to the newest newbie, we all struggle with life detours and writing detours. So hangeth thou in there, writer.
I had something happen several years ago. I was blogging. Okay, I should say it's going to date me, but it's over a decade ago. I was blogging consistently. And one day in prayer, I heard the Lord speak to me, do little with your blog. And I was like, what? Because that was pretty much my primary writing. And I kind of didn't listen. And God kept prompting to do little with my blog. Well, I thought maybe God didn't mean don't write, write my blog. I don't know what I thought he meant. I was just trying to, I think, explain away what God was asking of me, and keep doing what I was doing. And let me tell you that usually doesn't go very well when you do that. And my blog was a family related blog. And Jaylee had come along. She was pretty sick. And so I shared some of the things on my blog. She had a lot of birth defects and medical issues from that. Because I didn't listen to God, I ended up with people that railed against me and my family, saying that we were irresponsible, we shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have done that. I had even people tell me that I was irresponsible for even allowing my daughter to be born with her medical problems. And the hurt and pain that came from that, because I didn't listen to God, was tremendous. And it was an extra pain and hurt that I didn't need. I Thanks. I add that to the other stresses that I ended up dealing with unexpectedly from places that I was not looking, places that I thought was safe and turned out not to be. Adding that on there, and it made it so I didn't want to write a thing. I couldn't write. I didn't trust anybody. I was afraid of being unjustly persecuted. And so I determined it wasn't safe for me to speak. It wasn't safe for me to write. I didn't trust anybody. So I stopped talking to people and I couldn't write anymore. Now, I think that's probably an extreme case for most people, whereas if God leads you in this way and you don't do it, that was pretty extreme. But, I think it's important to listen to those nudges that God gives and really strongly consider them and take a chance to follow them. Because not only does it avoid maybe some unpleasant things, but it brings blessing that we don't know is going to be there. Now, I kind of wonder what would have happened if I had listened in a timely manner. Eventually I did end up listening, and I did end up shutting down that blog, and it is completely off the internet now. But had I listened earlier, might things have been a little bit different? Probably. So Norma sharing that kind of brought that to mind as a detour I should have taken and did not take. Would have been better if I had. Any thoughts, Melissa, Norma?
Lots of thoughts. I'm trying to get mine in order because they're all over the place. My ADD's gone crazy this morning because I'm kind of in a state of burnout right now and trying to transition through that burnout and get into the writing again. And so, and still stay true to focus because I'm in the middle of a book launch, as a lot of people know. And so it's been a hard road. I have a lot of expectations that weren't met and things that I didn't know to do that kind of were thrust upon me. And so it caused a lot of stress and not knowing how to approach this. And it kind of, in reflecting on it and trying to regroup and figure out how to proceed. Yes, in the one instance, I'm in my own detour right now. But I was reflecting back on past detours and kind of trying to get a refocus on my historical fiction series as a whole. And one of our fellow friends that Norma knows, my friend Pearl Allard, she made a comment the other night in a text about my book, Lord of Vengeance. And that got me thinking about the detour of that book itself. And that was kind of a fun reflection, I guess. So this is probably a little more positive light to focus on, which is probably good, because if I get to focusing on negative detours, I might get emotional on the recording here. But Lord of Vengeance was a detour all its own. All of my books in that series were, but I had through a period of 2 decades been working on one book that transitioned into a series, and I was never really accomplishing one book as a whole. I'd get partway through one and then I'd bounce to another one and start writing it, and I was not finishing a project. And then, you know, health detours with pregnancies and other life detours would take me off track, and I'd let the book sit for almost entire years and not do anything with them during that process. And I had it was coming up on the year 2016 actually, and I had determined the year prior that I was going to get back on board and start trying to prepare my novels to submit, you know, regularly, to try to get a literary agent to represent me and start getting my books out there. And I'd procrastinated it because I was afraid, and I didn't think that I had what it took to pull it off. And through the whole process of that, I was fighting the urging that I had from God and others to complete the other books. I had one friend who had been warning all of us over and over, you know, you need to have several books done, because, you know, once you get going, it's just going to be boom, boom, boom. So you should really complete your other books. And I'm like, you know, kicking at the goats. No, I don't have time to write out all these other books. I'm not finishing these ones. But I had finally succumbed to the idea around 2016, and I had joined the Jerry Jenkins Guild to try to, you know, get myself on the right path. And there I met all of my friends who became my faith writing warrior sisters, and we formed our group from there. And it was shortly after that that I started working with Serious Writer and Writers Chat. And 2017 rolled around and I still hadn't finished Lord of Vengeance, but I knew I needed to. So everyone started getting on the kick of NaNoWriMo, which, you know, this is the month of it now. So it's kind of ironic that this conversation comes up, but I just determined that year, okay, I'm going to use NaNoWriMo to finish this novel. And so I sat down at the spurring of my friends, my faith writer sisters and others, and finished Lord of Vengeance in 2017 through NaNoWriMo. And it wasn't too long after that, in the following year, that I cleaned up my proposals and made submissions to literary agent and got a contract. And so God just kind of caused one thing after another to spiral after that, through my being faithful to do what I didn't want to do in the first place. I kept procrastinating it. So yeah, that's a positive detour that led to a good thing. And yeah, don't fight those God-led detours, because you may find that they lead to blessings that you don't want to miss out on.
And what a good point, Melissa, that not all detours are negative. You know, not all of them are sickness or stress. I mean, I know it was stressful, but it was a good kind of stress initially, and we just have to trust God, like you said. Stop fighting against the goad and just surrender how we think it should be to God's plan, because His is always going to be better. And I've learned in over 42 years of being a Christian, God wins anyway. So, you know, you would think by now I would learn to quit fighting, but yeah, I'm a little stubborn. So there you go, little vulnerability there, but it's true. And you know, God is just so good if we'll just listen when He leads us. So I love that. I love, Melissa, that you brought an encouraging one, an encouraging detour. And Brandy, yours is a powerful detour that I'm so thankful you chose to trust God and didn't allow such a hurtful time to keep you from ever returning to writing. A blessing to God and a blessing to you, because of, again, taking time to be still and listen to God. I'm sure all of us here can attest to where would, again, as I said earlier, not only where would we be without God in the detours, but even in our writing. You know, if we try to just push through for what we want, I don't know about you guys, but my past experience, that hasn't worked out so well. So before we go ahead, and either of you have any other thoughts you want to share?
I do.
Go ahead, Brandy.
That detour with the blog and the hurt that came after that, with all of the other stuff that I was dealing with family detours, that did take me out of writing for a good 10 years. And if anybody had said to me before that I would be forced out of writing for a certain amount of time, even just due to my own pain, I would have probably run screaming, because I was so afraid of not, I was afraid of having to wait. I didn't want to wait. And so, you know, even though that detour in itself was hard, it produced excellent fruit, because God doesn't waste anything, especially the hard things. But I would like to also share a completely positive detour that I had, and unexpected. I had ended up connecting with somebody through LinkedIn, and I don't remember exactly the details of how we ended up connecting. It came about really weird. I think it was he sent me a connection request on LinkedIn, and there was something in his post or something that said he was from my area, where I had grown up. And I got talking to him, and it turned out that he happened to be the teenager that always came with his bicycle to the building where my grandfather had his art shop when I was 6 years old. I hadn't seen him or heard from him ever. In fact, I never even had known his name when I was little, and I had moved away from that street around 6 or 7 years old. And so to come back and find out afterwards that he was this teenage boy that stuck so prominently in my head, because he was about the only other kid that I saw at that age, other than, you know, like school. There were no other kids really around in that area. Was very strange. And he had sent me a connection request through LinkedIn because of the writing connection that he saw. And he had gone into the writing, and he actually did something with music. And so then he said to me, you know, I have a project with music, and I'm looking for a writer to write devotionals to go with each song. Might you be interested? And I said, yeah, because devotional writing was something that I was doing a lot of at that time. And so I ended up writing several devotionals for a 2 CD pack. So on the insert of this set are my devotionals with all of this music. It was just a really cool, interesting project that I never would have come across, except that God dropped this weird thing in my lap from a connection when I was so little, even before I knew that I would be writing, and even before he knew that he would be a writer. Just a really cool thing. So sometimes God does the completely unexpected, throws you a detour that is super cool, and all you need to do is take a chance and say yes. So when God does that for you, I really encourage you to go with it, because the blessings and the amazingness that you get of God is just unbeatable. Really is.
Good point, Brandy. Thanks for sharing. That's a fabulous story. And many of us have, I'm sure, similar stories of just God moments, is what I like to call them, where he just shows up out of the blue and does something extraordinary. And how cool that he did that. You know, it's funny because as you were talking, I was thinking your family's been in the race, excuse me, in the racing world for a while, right? And I was thinking, you should write devotions for people, for racers, for drivers, for that community. Just a thought. Just a thought. So let's go ahead if y'all want to come back on camera if you want to, and we'll share some detours. You know, life is full of detours, whether you're a writer or not, but it's what you do with them. As Brandy and Melissa have said, sometimes we have to push through the detour to get to the other side. Maybe God's testing our tenacity. Sometimes we have to be still and just let God work out the details of the detour. And oftentimes it's hard to know which one of those we're in, and unless we just get quiet. And anyway, enough of my rambling on. Anybody want to share about a detour that you've been on or experienced recently? Pam, go ahead.
Okay. My life's like Brandy's, because I have Anna. So there's lots of detours. I can't tell you how many times I've taken a notebook to the hospital and sat and wrote while she was, post seizure and, in the bed. So sometimes you think it's a detour, but you can still make use of it, so it's kind of cool. But what you went through, Norma, with the grief brain and how hard 2 years ago my mom died, kind of unexpectedly. And then 5 days later, one of my best friends, 2 months later, my longtime best friend. And for the next year, 12 more people that I love in some way died. And none of it was from COVID. And it was like, dang, nobody told me when I turned like 60, I was going to be in perpetual mourning. But, and it took me not quite 2 years, just this summer, like in the beginning of summer, end of June, I woke up one day and I went, I feel like I'm coming out of the fog. So, I mean, I wrote short stories. That's what saved me. I'm not a short story writer, but I did them, got them published, kept me going. So now I'm just like, got lots of stuff to do now. It's almost 2 years of not doing anything. So, but God allowed it. Like you said, Norma, he allows things and causes them too, and for his reasons. So I'm thankful.
And just like in all throughout the Bible, we see that God, caused things to happen. Sometimes it's to get our attention. Sometimes, honestly, it's not even about us. It really isn't. And I've learned that too. Sometimes it's about those watching us.
Everything about it. Now, come on.
Right? We're so vain. We think it's all about us, right? As the song said. I won't sing for you. Y'all would run away with hurting ears. But that's something that God has shown me a few times also, is the trials we go through, the detours, sometimes aren't even about us. It's about those watching us or those that are going through it with us. It's more about them than us. And again, that's one of those things that's really hard to discern when you're in the middle of the muck and the detour. But often that's true. And we won't really know the full extent of that until we get to heaven, of those who watch us. And because often we're unaware. When I was just a young Christian, my oldest son was just a baby, and I didn't go to church one Sunday. And our neighbor, who was party-hardied every weekend and was not a believer, he came to the fence when I was taking trash out, and he goes, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Why? What's up?" He goes, "You didn't go to church today. I just wanted to make sure you were okay." I had no clue that wild partying man was watching me. But man, did God drive that point home, that we never know who's watching. and who's watching how we handle a storm. Not that we have to handle it perfectly, because none of us do, but do we hold on to our Christian integrity as we go through that storm? So you just never know what God's up to. Catherine, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I made a written list, but it's not being too cooperative. That's how stressed and detoured I feel right now. I've been trying to copy it into the chat, but some of the paragraphs just aren't cooperating there. I got the first two in anyway. And okay, if I could share my screen, I do that. Just the third one on the list, some of the people I know are getting sick. Apparently sick, go to bed for a few days sick, and I don't know exactly what it is, or it's even the same thing, but it's apparently not COVID or flu. So it's hard to believe that 3 healthy adults under 60 could all get RSV and have that serious symptoms. Anyway, in addition to the second part there is that they've rescheduled the Tuesday night Bible study twice this past month, one related to that, and another because they wanted to watch the Houston Astros play in the World Series, and that was more important than attending a Bible study. Astros got clobbered that night in the face of a very good overall postseason eventual World Series win, just saying. And the fourth and last item on my written list is that I'm worried, I'm chronically anxious or depressed, always about something. I worry the world will come to the brink of war if there's bad news on the national news, and I worry that I won't be able to take it if the light is red and I find the coffee shop I plan to stop at closed already. And what I would consider not only a blessing but a miracle is that I am actually in good health myself. I've not caught any viruses from anyone else. I do not have high blood pressure. My last blood work test showed high triglycerides, but that might just be because no one told me not to eat 2 hours earlier. Okay, but yeah, my brain has gotten into the detour mode, and the idea that whatever seems to go right, it will be canceled at the last minute or done within my lifetime, or just plain won't last. The notes in the chat are about my schedule struggles and our cat's senior issues. On that one, I'm more worried about my mother's fretting than about how long the cat will live at the moment.
And Catherine, it's easy to get weighed down with all that's happening around us. We've all experienced that. And that's where knowing God's promises come in. They don't always instantly fix the situation, but knowing He's got us, and knowing that no matter what happens, God is in control. And that's kind of cliche today, but it's still true. Yeah. I believe that because of the detours I've experienced the last little while, a phrase I like to say often is, when you can't feel His presence, when you can't feel God's presence, trust His promises. Because sometimes in the worry and the detour, in the overwhelmingness of life, sometimes we feel like we don't see God, we don't feel Him. Where are you, God? And in those moments, we may not feel His presence, but we can always trust His promises because they are always true.
Yeah, I don't think I trust God very much. True confession time.
Right.
Yes, I worry about the possible and the impossible at every turn, and I want the impossible, which is a life completely free of change, uncertainty, or any cause me anxious starting right now and never ending from that moment.
Right. Well, I would just encourage you to, and it's hard. There's lots of times I've struggled with trusting God with a circumstance, and it hasn't been until I've let go and say, okay, God, you've got this. You're the only one that can really fix, control, or do anything about this.
Okay.
And it feels scary at first because hi, I'm Norma. I'm a recovering control freak. And so I want to be in control. And I've shared with friends of mine how often I ask God, can I be Holy Ghost Junior, even just for a day, please? And he says, no, daughter, that's not available. And I went to a writers conference back in August, and through a skit type activity they were doing, I actually got to be the Holy Spirit. I was so excited. I was like, yeah, I get to be Holy Ghost Junior for like 2 minutes. Well,
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, finish what you're saying.
So the activity was I was leading this girl through a maze of sin. And the point was we need to listen to the Holy Spirit to help us avoid sin. And at one point I was trying to swing wide so she would miss one sin. And I wasn't paying attention to the people in the class are going, stop, stop, stop. And I looked down, my foot was on the sin of pride. I didn't do so well as Holy Ghost Junior, so I haven't asked God anymore since then. That fixed that. That's a true story. That really did happen, and I was just like, okay, I'm done. Sorry,
Okay,
God, I
so-
won't ever ask again.
So-
Catherine, what's your question?
Well, first, I know what I can't get. That doesn't stop me from wanting it and being bitter, feeling bitter when I don't get it. However, what I really want to ask is, what do you do when you feel you let go and let go and let go, and you're just plain tired of doing it?
At that point, probably the best thing is just pray and ask God, and maybe not move forward until you get an answer, or perhaps seek wise counsel. I'm not a counselor. These are just things that have worked for me when I've struggled with not, with letting go and not seeing things happen, or when I've done things that I felt God prompted me to do and there was no result. And I'm like, see, God, I knew it wouldn't work. Because sometimes what we're asked to do, to let go of, is more about obedience and trusting Him than it is about the results of what we're asking. And it's difficult, and it can be heart-wrenching. It can be frustrating. It can make you angry. Expectations are a big thing. And when we have unmet expectations, it can create angst and anxiousness and all these things in us. And we just have to keep coming back to God and His Word. That for me, that's all I have. That's the only place I can get peace. And through good Christian counsel and Christian friends, other writer friends that fully understand, like Melissa and Rachel and I are part of this prayer warrior writing sister group. And we really do spur each other on. And we've all been through some really, really tough times. And so, Catherine, I would urge you, even outside of Writers Chat, to try to find, 2 or 3 or 4 other writers and plug in and share life with, even if it's not local. Like, we live all over the country. Melissa's way out west. I'm in North Carolina. We have some all the way up in Canada. So, we're like all over the place. But we spur each other on. At one point, one of the ladies of our group was in the Czech Republic, right, Melissa?
And another.
Yeah, so, and another in China. So, it doesn't have to be local. But just, I would strongly encourage anyone here that's not in a small group of writers to try to find one, or invite people and start one yourself. So that would be, I hope that answered your question, Catherine.
Yeah. Okay. I'm
Thank you.
noting something else in the chat. That's good enough
Okay.
for now.
All right, thank you.
I wanted to
Any-
add to that too a little bit if I could. I think, and I can't say that I'm speaking for everybody in this instance, but definitely for me, one of the times that I find that I struggle the most in anxiety and circumstances in the stalemate or the detours is when I become too inwardly focused on my circumstances and on life and the unmet expectations. All of it just kind of starts to press down, bottle down until you just want to explode. And I've found that in those circumstances that when God has me down there at that rock bottom state, he's helping me to realize that I have not reached out and have not been focused outward rather than inward. And so I need to get into a place of ministry and reaching out to others and seeing them in their circumstances rather than fixating on my own. One of the best examples that I can think of was ways back. It was around the time, probably 2 years after I had joined Christian Writers Group International and had started to connect with people there. And we had been through our family had been through another church split. We'd been through 2 at that point, and our personal youth ministry had ended at that point. And there was a lot of bitterness on our end with God and with others. And I was sitting there lamenting that, I wasn't reaching out to kids anymore. I wasn't having any influence, and leading people to God, and thought, what good am I? I'm not even connecting with other writers except, online, and hardly talking with anyone. What difference am I making to people with my writing? And around that time, God brought this young teenage girl to our group, and we had a connection. We had similar interests in our writing and fiction, and I found out that she was into cutting and wanted to kill herself. And God allowed that circumstance, allowed me to actually minister to her through my hurting, and to reach out to her and encourage her as a writer, and also to encourage her to reach out to her parents, because she had a hard circumstance and she wasn't willing to do that. And God showed me that reaching out to others during my hurt freed me from my circumstance, from my perspective of myself, and helped me to get my eyes on him and on others. And so I'm grateful for that time. I'm grateful for that girl and the chance that I had to minister to her and encourage her in her writing and in her life. And so that's what I would really push others to, is to really look at your circumstance, look at the anxiety and the things that you're facing, and think, well, am I getting too inward focused? Have I lost sight of God? Have I lost sight of others? Do I need to pour out and reach out? And so that would be what I would encourage others to do.
What a powerful story, Melissa, of an amazing detour that God put before you. And it's easy as writers because it's it's kind of lonely, and we're at our keyboard, and it's about our thoughts and our characters in our heads and all of these things. But yeah, we need to reach out, because what is the purpose of our writing? Whitney asked, who's going to read, what difference is my writing making to people? A big difference, because when people are going through something, like Melissa's friend, the teenager that God put before her, that young girl, I'm sure, felt that she was the only one experiencing such hardship. And to know that somebody else has walked that road gives them hope. And I'm going to cry, y'all, and I don't mean to. Our words give people hope. And sometimes, and I've shared this many times recently, Rachel Colby, who's here, she told me one time when I submitted for a contest, and I didn't win in the contest, but she said, "You don't know which of those judges needed to hear exactly what you wrote." So I would say that to all of us. We don't know who is a beta reader, who we asked, hey, would you give this a look over for whatever, give it a quick critique. You don't know what those words might mean to that person. And maybe not in that moment, but later when something happens, God brings your words back to the forefront of their mind. So I'm with you with the struggling of, what difference are my words going to make? Who am I to think I can write? I struggle with that imposter syndrome all the time. Pam, we'll go to you and then we'll get to Yvonne.
Just real quick, with life detours that have nothing to do even with writing, we have to pay attention. I was in Williamsburg over the weekend, and I always try to cook out on the grill at least once, and it's charcoal, so I kind of have to be back and forth and look and all. And there was an old woman came to her deck, which was right by the grill, and asked me about, are you going to make sure those coals are out when you get done? I'm like, well, they'll probably be almost out when I'm done. And then she said, I watched my house burn down, and so I'm always nervous. And I said, no worries, I will bring a pitcher of water and I will make sure. And I did that. And so to make sure she wasn't still worried, I went to her deck. She had her door open because it was 85 down there. And I said, woohoo, I put the charcoal out. We talked and my dinner got cold for 20 minutes. Dear sweet Christian lady, Lillian, who you just don't know who you're going to meet, right? And so I'm praying for this dear lady now. And so anyway, it's detours come in everywhere, not just our writing. And it's already listening to the nudge. I always say the nudge. And you know it's God. You know it when you know his voice. So
right.
It's always a good thing. And so we just warmed dinner up in the microwave.
There you go. Yvonne, you wanted to share?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I have 4 books that I've written, and every one of them was on a detour. And I'm now working on number 5. And the unreal part was that I kept saying, why am I writing this? I don't even feel good. But the unreal part was that somebody I hadn't had any contact with in ages, although, we've been friends through the years, contacted me and said, please start some kind of do a live presentation. I don't care what it is you do, the topic. I don't care what time it is. I don't care where you go to lunch afterwards. I've retired. I don't even know who I am anymore. Now, this was someone who had a going blog. And we did the live session, and God just brought all the ones there that he wanted, in spite of the floods that had come from Eon. And we didn't know if we could even get to the facility that day. And there we were. We all got there. One had her car flooded and lost the home, but the husband had a truck and took her. And now I'm starting the On Live group tonight. I cannot begin to tell you how eager I am, how excited I am to be doing that group, and with the people who are coming, the Christian women, because I made it very clear it was for Christian women. Would I have believed this when I was going through all of that gas poisoning and the mold and mildew? No, I really thought God was going to take me home. In fact, I begged him to take me home. So, has a single book been easy? No. Has my laptop crashed? Has my printer gone out of date? And all the apps gone out of date? Yes. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. And a lot of you know that I lost most of the furniture during that mold and mildew incident. And what I didn't lose then, I lost when I suffered the effects of the gas poisoning and lost 35 pounds and thought I'd never be able to eat again because I couldn't hold anything down for almost 3 years. But I am so happy to say I've gained 15 pounds, which is
Yay.
huge. And I want you to know, those of you who are new, like Whitney, this group was so encouraging, so supportive, and still held me accountable, you know, in the ways that I could handle. And there were times I'd get on and you wouldn't see me, but those tears were rolling down my cheeks. I was holding my head up and I thought, why am I even here? But I want you to know that when I've done things on Canva Pro, thank you, Norma. When I've done things on the book brush, I have been like a little kid who's finally gone to the circus and the fair and everything all in one. And I can't explain how exciting it is. And to put on a pair of pants that I wore before and not have it fall off me. I mean, that's amazing. Just
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you,
Yay.
all of you. And
Or-
anybody who's new, you get back here and you hang in here as often as you can. We know that there'll be times, doctor's appointments, children, family, something will happen, but be here because
Thank-
these people love you.
Thank you, Yvonne, for sharing. What a precious testimony of God's goodness, of He's not finished with you yet. And all of us here, I'm sure, maybe except for the new people, can attest to what an encouragement Writers Chat is. And I know I am so thankful to Johnny and Jean for having started this, because there have been times when I would share in a private chat with them, I'm ready to throw in the towel, I'm ready to quit writing. But this group has spurred me on and kept me going. You guys are just so encouraging, all of you, and our guest speakers, and this is just a wonderful community, family. We really do. The heart of this, of Writers Chat, is to spur each other on in the calling that God's laid before us, which is to write, whether it's poetry, articles, novels, nonfiction, whatever, maybe He's called you to write newsletters for your church. You're still a writer, and you're welcome here, and you'll be encouraged to keep walking, keep taking that step. And so I am honored to be able to do this with you today. And Melissa or Brandy, anything you want to say in closing? We won't be here next week because of Thanksgiving. So we'll see you in 2 weeks. Other than that, either of you have anything to say as we wrap up for today?
Just encourage everyone, if you can, stick around for the after party. We'll be here for another 15 more minutes after the recording is over to share and encourage one another still. And like Norma said, next week we're taking a break, but then we'll come back the following week, and Johnny and I are going to be talking about tropes in fiction. So maybe we'll have a little fun there in that discussion. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys then, I guess.
Is that it? All right. I guess that's a wrap for this episode, y'all. Hang out for a little bit for the after party. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.